Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Wavelength.
You know, Adelaide has worked really hard over the last few years to build a small bar reputation. When I was a kid, the big night in Adelaide was kind of, staying at home and watching the bill.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide.
As a female Sparky, I did get lots of comments on my gender.
You should be having...
And here to make a difference. Yeah, make the difference. Give the youth a voice.
On Fresh 92.7.
Good evening and welcome to Wavelength, sparking the combos about Adelaide you should be having with Zane and David.
Hey Zane, I have barely recovered from last week's show still. What a mammoth one that was.
That was fun. This one, a little bit less heavy.
A little bit less heavy, very animal-centric, I've noticed, and I'm very keen to crack into it. But first today, everyone's talking about how the CFS has declared a catastrophic fire danger rating for tomorrow as we are heading into the hottest November day on record on Wednesday. It is also expected that we will see total fire bans across the state. The ambulance union has claimed that an elderly man who died in an ambulance that was ramped for 2 hours at the Flinders Medical Centre was given no chance to survive. The union secretary, Phil Palmer, has described the man's death as a disgusting and disgraceful waste of human life. And Qantas has hit back at Black Eyed Peas star will.i.am, defending its staff after the rapper accused a flight attendant of racism. The airline has said that it will back the staffer all the way through the court if it comes to it.
Interestingly, also the same flight attendant involved in that, who the Veronicas had this big stink about.
Yeah, I remember that. It's so uncanny. How strange.
So strange. Tonight, is fake meat our future? From big fast food chains to small local businesses, we have a convo about why plant-based products are popping up everywhere. We bring you a report straight from one of the biggest protests to take place in Adelaide over the last week. And next, do we need to change our attitudes about eating one of our national animals? It's a very meat animal sustainability focused show tonight.
You could say it's a meaty show, a meaty episode.
Shush.
Wavelength.
We touch a lot of bases on this show, Zane. We talk about racism, drugs, sex work.
Some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Last week, climate change, climate anxiety, the end of days.
The end of the world as we know it. But when we reported on a local burger joint switching from beef to kangaroo meat, it opened up one of the most robust arguments between listeners we've ever had.
Like one of our most engaged with Facebook posts ever, just everyone going at each other in the comments.
It's crazy.
Some people are viciously opposed to hunting and eating our national emblem, but in this next story, Anthony sat down with an ecologist who discussed why the survival of kangaroos, and a bunch of other species as well, might just hinge upon us culling them more.
Wavelength.
In recent times, maybe as a result of campaigning by animal activist groups, this general perception regarding eating kangaroo has emerged.
I just feel like eating kangaroo meat is just so un-Australian.
But after seeing the True Story documentary that was released earlier this year, it appears that the welfare of kangaroos may be threatened by a very different reason. That is, being too large in number. I spoke to the same ecologist who featured in the documentary, Dr. John Reid, to find out what situation Australia's national symbol is really in.
There's a number of different kangaroo species, of course. There are some macropods like wallabies and small kangaroos that are endangered, and there's some other species that are really widespread and very abundant. So the main kangaroos that we're interested in at the moment are western and eastern grey kangaroos and red kangaroos and yiros, and all four of those large species are in much higher abundance and much more widespread than they used to be. I love kangaroos. All Australians love kangaroos, and yeah, they're really important to have kangaroos as part of our landscape, part of our culture, part of our ecosystems, and they do some really important things. They feed on grasses and other shrubs. They provide food for other animals. But like any animal, it doesn't matter if it's a kangaroo or a sheep or a rabbit. If you have too many, they reduce the vegetation cover, they stop plants from regenerating, they cause erosion, and eventually, as we found in the last few years, they can eat all the grass and end up dying of starvation, which is a horrible way to go. If you speak to Greening Australia or any of the organisations that are trying to save native plants and rehabilitate areas that have been degraded, kangaroos are one of the main threats there. So there's a whole range of threatened plants, orchids, grasses, shrubs, and then there's a whole lot of insects and honey eaters and honey possums and things like that that are tied to those shrubs, directly threatened by kangaroos eating too much. And then there's animals as well. Where I live at the moment, we've got malleefowl, which are a nationally threatened bird, and their numbers are declining because there's not enough cover and food on the ground for them, and that's directly related to kangaroos. We've managed goats, there's no sheep, there's no rabbits, but it's the kangaroos are removing that food. So it's happening right now, and it's happening across Australia. It's really broad scale, and it's taken a long time for Australians to realise that, because we all think because kangaroos are native and adapted to the environment that they're not causing any problems.
Just how severe is this issue now, and what management actions could be taken?
We should have been taking management actions a long time ago. As we see on the news every night, a fair bit of Australia is gripped in drought, and there's livestock and millions of kangaroos dying. That's a real shame. We know what sustainable levels of kangaroos are, and we've been well above that for decades. In really small areas like council areas or golf courses, it's possible to sedate kangaroos and then stop them from breeding. But over the large scale, in southern Australia, where because we've got sheep and other livestock, we don't want to have dingoes, then the most sustainable and ethical way of managing kangaroos is to humanely harvest them with accredited hunters.
In order to make harvesting viable, are people being encouraged to eat more kangaroo meat and buy kangaroo leather products?
Absolutely. I'd encourage anyone who's concerned about animal welfare and ethics to consider eating kangaroo meat. I don't eat chicken and ham. I'm opposed to factory farming and things like that, but absolutely I consider eating kangaroo meat is something that's really good environmentally. It's good for carbon. They're very low emitters of methane, and ethically. When a kangaroo is harvested, it's living its natural life. It's never been fenced or yarded or given an ear tag or hormone injections or anything like that. It's totally free range and natural. Kangaroo harvesters are only allowed to take kangaroos that are shot in the head, and the RSPCA have accredited that as a humane way of harvesting them. Every other animal that we eat is farmed. They're generally trucked and yarded and have more stress and less freedom and things like that. So as far as free range and organic and ethical harvesting, I don't think you can get better than kangaroo.
Wavelength.
That was Anthony chatting to an ecologist about kangaroo meat and culling kangaroos, which is supposedly something that needs to happen.
Right.
According to him and according to some, in order to actually control populations of kangaroos in rural areas.
They're a bit of a pest, though, I see.
Which was kind of the argument that Burger Theory used years ago when they first switched over to kangaroo meat.
Yeah, because there's an overabundance of them. So
and they need to be culled anyway. We might as well use that resource. But that decision was so polarizing because even people who fully eat meat, some of them have a very strange opinion. Well, I'm not going to call it strange. I get it. But people who otherwise would eat any form of meat, basically, that's commercially available, they feel really funny about eating kangaroos because they hold such a special place in our psyche, I guess.
Well, totally. They're a national emblem. They're pretty adorable, I think.
I mean, I get it. Like, I wouldn't ever eat dog meat.
Yeah, but they do in China. But I'm also of the opinion that I don't eat meat. And when I did used to eat meat, I went to a place where they did sell kangaroo meat and everyone else tried it. And for some reason I didn't. I just thought it was weird. And I sort of chickened out and I was like, no, I don't want to eat a kangaroo.
I have had it and it is delicious when done well.
Yeah. But now I'm of the opinion, like, if you are going to eat as a vegetarian, I'm like, if you're going to eat meat, you should be able to eat any type of meat.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on where you stand. Like, you draw your own lines when it comes to this,
Which I think is important.
Wavelength.
Andrew is off camping, doing something very fun. So Dave is going to stand in and do our regular segment himself. What the hell is going on in politics at the moment?
What the hell is going on in politics at the moment? Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
This week in politics was certainly controversial, with politicians at each other's throats and launching blame at one another following the devastating bushfires in New South Wales and southeast Queensland. The Greens copped a lot of the blame, with a number of Liberal and National MPs claiming the Progressive Party's opposition to hazard reduction burns in national parks made the fires worse. But Nationals backbencher Barnaby Joyce more or less lost any credibility when he claimed live on Sky News that two of the victims who lost their lives to the fires most likely voted for the Greens. Prime Minister ScoMo and Finance Minister Matthias Cormann both denounced the comments. But ScoMo was certainly not out of hot water this week and was under extreme national and international pressure in the aftermath of the bushfires, thanks in large part to his inaction in the face of climate change, which many have attributed heavy blame for the bushfires to. The font of terrible takes, Israel Folau, also threw his 2 cents in on the bushfire situation, claiming that the bushfires are some kind of karmic retribution from God after Australia legalised same-sex marriage and certain states decriminalised abortion. This time he is being slammed from every single corner of the political spectrum, with even Barnaby Joyce going on TV this morning to denounce Folau's comments. In other news today, former PM Paul Keating has slammed Australian security agencies and the media for their anti-China rhetoric, saying they fail to grasp the magnitude of shifting power in the Asia-Pacific. Keating went on to say that the United States power has ceded influence and withdrawn from the region, and that Australia must become strategically realistic in its approach to China. And that's what the hell is going on in politics this week.
You know what? I'm actually so over talking about old mate Israel Folau.
I almost didn't include it. I just feel like I'm just egging him on in a way.
Let's not from this point forward. You know what? Because he's saying this stuff and getting airtime, and then it fuels this narrative that he has that he's so persecuted against for his religion. And it's like, no, you're just saying inflammatory things, and everyone in the nation is reporting on it as though it's news. Like, someone's political and religious views should not really be news.
No, but I still did it. What's wrong with me? I'm part of the problem, aren't I?
Slap off air. No, I'm not going to do that. But I think we should just all stop giving this stuff oxygen because it's just so stupid.
It's toxic.
Rest of the bushfires, though, obviously a very intense week in politics, responding to an unfolding disaster in real time.
Yep.
We discussed a lot of the climate change issues to do with that last week, which obviously there's one side of people who are really pushing for more action on this. Outside of all of that, there are things that you can do to help, and there is an article on the Fresh website, fresh927.com.au. If you just straight up want to help now, you want to help in a tangible way, there is plenty of different ways that you can do that as outlined on the website. And if you do live in a rural area and you're listening to this, please make sure that your own properties are cleared and you are controlling the flammable matter that is on your property.
And I mean, like, as I said at the top of the show, it's going to be the hottest November day on record on Wednesday. Good luck, everyone.
I'm going to the beach myself. But do stay safe on Wednesday. Stay safe this week. The weather is going to be really intense.
Wavelength.
Is fake meat the future? That's the story. We're about to get stuck into a huge discussion to take place there.
Massive.
But earlier we were talking about kangaroos specifically. Anthony did a story speaking to an ecologist about why culling kangaroos is something that a lot of people believe is quite necessary in the regions. But of course, when it comes to using kangaroo meat and kangaroo leather and products from kangaroos, a lot of people really balk at that.
Yeah, some people are a bit off-put by eating the national emblem, but not Paul the vegan hunter.
No, yes. So this is why I wanted to bring this text up before we move into the fake meat story, right? Yeah. Paul the vegan hunter, which is an amazing name. Just an amazing title, a vegan hunter. This is so interesting. So Paul says that he's vegan for health reasons, but 100% supportive of roo culls because he's seen the damage caused by overbreeding. This is the whole issue that Anthony and the person he spoke to was talking about.
Yeah.
Licensed firearm owner has been, drafted in by other friends to assist in their cull quotas.
Brought to the front line.
And he says this is a huge issue in country Australia, but in city areas, it's unknown, basically. He proposes maybe meat-free Mondays, then Kangaroo Tuesdays.
I think it's a good way forward. Thank you very much.
There's no alliteration there, but there's also no day that starts with a K, so I see why he's just settled for Kangaroo Tuesdays.
I think it's a great way forward.
Exactly. Let's get stuck into our big discussion.
Yep. Vegan alternatives are more common than ever, with some of our biggest fast food joints jumping on the train this year. And many of these vegan products are designed to look and taste like the meats they seek to replace.
Is fake meat our future? To try and answer that question, Amila sat down with a new local vegan eatery who've honestly left many people, including myself actually, unable to tell the difference.
Wavelength.
From Lord of the Fries to the Rebel Whopper, the rise of vegan or meatless alternatives is impossible not to notice. While many Aussies are open to trying new foods, how far will these options take us? I talked to the co-owner of Staazi & Co., Anastasia Lavrentiadis, about the state of veganism and whether society has been open to normalising new diets.
Absolutely. I think veganism is growing. More and more people are becoming aware about what's going on behind closed doors with animal agriculture, with the Amazon, with the environmental destruction. So I think knowledge is power, and as people become aware, they're making better choices, and people seem to be more accepting of it now, whereas maybe 5-10 years ago, it was a bit weird, but I think now you get less of a reaction.
Why do you think people should eat vegan meat?
I don't necessarily think they should eat vegan meat, but I think they should, definitely adopt a plant-based diet because it's better for the environment, for their health, and most importantly for the animals.
Do you hope to see other food companies adopt vegan options to their menu, whether they be a fast food franchise or something smaller scale?
100%. More vegan is just a tick, tick, tick. Yes, yes, yes. Under any circumstance.
Why do you think people might be reluctant to try vegan food?
Basically conditioning and an inability to have an open mind. We're all raised eating meat and believing that it's normal, it's been normalised in our society. But if you have the opportunity to explore what it actually means and where it all comes from, then you realise that it's actually not everything that we've been taught to believe.
Do you think that having options like Staazi and Co. opens people's perspectives to trying new foods?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And I think Staazi and Co. has given that opportunity. Whether people have eaten it accidentally or intentionally, the reaction that I've received is that they're pretty blown away. I can't believe this isn't meat. And that's a good thing because they're trying something and they're realising that they can eat a product very similar to meat without causing all that destruction. I come from a Greek background and everyone believes that, Greek food is very meat-centric, but my family are open-minded and able to make a replacement. It just depends on the individual's ability to be open-minded. Culture's no excuse to put an end to this planet as we know it. Like, we're allowed to evolve and grow and create new cultures, and I think we think that food brings us together, and it does, but what I found at our family Christmases now that we have vegan ones is that we still all love each other, we still all laugh, we have a great time, and we still have a lot of food. And while some of my family were hesitant about doing that, like where's the lamb on the spit, once we've done it, they realise that, the lamb on the spit is not what defines us.
Wavelength.
Amila chatting to Staazi and Co., a new vegan eatery that's just opened up not that far from Fresh here, actually, in the city.
It's just around the corner from my house and it is so annoying because I always want to go there, but I can't overeat it because it's that good and I want to savour.
And this is the whole thing. We're asking whether fake meat is the future because they're popping up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And even Hungry Jack's and McDonald's have both introduced vegetarian burgers to their ranges.
Honestly, something I never would have thought I would ever see is a Hungry Jack's vegan burger.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so easy to find in supermarkets as well.
Yeah.
And then you've got places like Staazi and Co. I've been there a couple of times and I don't even think about the fact that I'm not eating meat. Like, it tastes spot on.
It's absolutely delicious.
Not to, this isn't a sponsored segment. We're just gushing off of our own accord. So it's interesting. And this is going to be interesting, David, as well. I'm looking forward to getting into this with you a little bit more because you don't eat meat at all.
No.
Vegetarian or vegan? I always forget.
Veggie.
I eat a lot of meat.
Yep.
Unapologetically, I absolutely love it. I just like food of all forms, to be honest, which makes this such an interesting thing to talk about, and we want you to get involved as well. Do you think fake meat is the future?
Wavelength.
Should we be eating that stuff from Staazi and Co.?
Literally stuff that is almost undistinguishable from real meat. And, there's a few places that are getting so good at creating fake meat that it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
You were telling me off air, actually, that you had a really interesting experience with this recently.
I went to a Mexican joint, shall not be named. Don't want to be sued. Anyway, so they they just brought out this new sort of vegan chicken in their burrito bowls. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try it out. Sounds cool. I used to like eating chicken. I don't anymore, but I'll try it anyway. It was so indistinguishable from real chicken that I thought it was absolutely disgusting. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Was the exact same texture of chicken. Like, it was falling apart like chicken. It's almost even smelt like chicken. And I just couldn't stomach it anymore because I just haven't had meat in a number of years now.
So interesting.
But it was 100% vegan.
Why do you think you had such a weird reaction to it?
I'm not sure. I think it was mostly how it looked, because it looked like meat to me. And I think that it sort of like screwed with my brain a little bit.
Because how long have you been vegetarian for?
Since 2014. So almost
5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Right. See, I am a full meat eater, full omnivore. I'll eat whatever. And I really enjoy going to vegan restaurants if the food is good. Because it's just such an interesting experience. And sometimes there are things where you actually just genuinely can't tell the difference. A lot of the time I feel that with vegan meat, you can actually tell the difference.
And that's the stuff I really like. I like that, like, it's so bad for you, but I like that hyper-processed, just
the uncanny
garbage.
valley. Like, I see how this reminds me of chicken. But I also see that it's not.
It's not going to convince anyone that it is actually that, but it tastes pretty good.
We got a text in from Karen saying 100% meat-free. If you want to go to the saddest place on earth, visit an abattoir.
Not planning on doing that, but if there are definitely a lot of documentaries that I have seen.
I don't want to watch those documentaries ever. I know.
It's the only reason that I went veggie in the first place. Like, it was that shocking. So, I mean,
I have no interest in watching that.
No. I mean, if you're...
This is kind of me, though. Like, my taste in movies just generally, like, I didn't like watching Black Mirror because it stressed me out. I'm not watching a documentary about pigs getting... Anyway, I'm not watching
terrified of being woke. The true horror is being woke.
Text from 111, nothing better than a meat lover's pizza.
But you can get Domino's meat lovers pizzas now. Did you know that?
That are vegan?
Yeah, they have this like whole vegan line, and they've just, I haven't like had many of them because I'm not a fan of vegan cheese, but you can get vegan like meat lovers. Like, it just looks like meat to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another text, I haven't found any fake meat that I like yet.
Yeah, fair call. But there is plenty of great vegan restaurants in Adelaide that, I mean, I've got a list. If you want me to go through them.
Again, as a meat eater, there are some great fake meat products out there.
Just like Staazi & Co. 100% recommend that if you want to try some good fake lamb.
If it involves jackfruit, run.
Yeah. Wait, you don't like jackfruit?
No.
So if you don't know what jackfruit is, it's this sort of pulled pork sort of substitute that is literally a fruit. And if you cook it in a certain way, it sort of is reminiscent of pulled pork. I quite like it, but it is a fruit, which is very odd.
I think it's a bit rank. We were having a really interesting chat as well with our producer, Jack, kind of talking about, you know, he mentioned that there is a burger place near him that does an awesome vegan burger, but it's still quite bad for you.
Yeah. I mean...
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of people say, yeah, eating vegan is better for you, and not necessarily.
Mate.
What's the place in Rundle Mall that is vegan and amazing, but...
Two-Bit Villains.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking
of.
So good, but like just as unhealthy as like going to Nordburger or anywhere else.
Oh, you're absolutely fooling yourself if you think that the Hungry Jack's burger is going to make you lose 10 pounds. Mate, it is not that good for you. It's probably terrible for you.
Hashtag clean eating at Hungry Jack's. I'll have a Rebel Whopper and a Diet Coke.
Hashtag clean eating.
All right, let's move on. Part 2 of this story, though, is very much along this vein, right? Amila's actually sat down with a dietitian to talk about why a vegan fake meat product might not necessarily be better for you.
Wavelength.
Tonight we're asking about whether fake meat is our future. Those advocating for fake meat and other vegan products claim it's more ethical and more sustainable, but as Amila found out when she sat down with a dietitian, that doesn't necessarily mean it's more healthy.
Wavelength.
Accredited dietitian Joyce Haddad joined me for an interview about whether plant-based meat alternatives are any better for us. While she supports vegetarian and vegan diets, there's also an acknowledgement that vegan junk food won't make you any healthier. This is what Joyce had to say. Is the worry around plant-based meat containing more salt a valid concern that people have?
So there should be a worry about any food that contains too much salt, not just plant-based meat. Salt intake in excess is linked to high blood pressure, which now affects more than 6 million Australians. And unfortunately, in the context of plant-based meats, they do have a high salt content. And then when you think of how they are eaten, usually with a lot of sauce and toppings, these only add to the salt content too. So it probably is something to take into account.
What do you think about products like the Rebel Whopper from Hungry Jack's? Are they good to even have as an option for consumers?
Yeah, so they're a good option for one reason, and that's because they tend to help populations cut down on their red meat product intake, which in turn may help reduce the negative factors associated with mass meat production. And we know this is having a very negative effect on our ecosystem, from the high productions of greenhouse gases and etc. And US data has previously shown that the plant-based alternatives to meat tend to produce less greenhouse gas emissions, 93% less land use as well, compared to making burgers from US beef. So it is still important to realise here that if you are willing to go and have a burger, just choose the one that you like. But the key thing is that you are eating it occasionally and also in small amounts. And if you are willing to help the planet reduce the production of red meat, then you might go and grab yourself a plant-based alternative. But having the burger for its health benefit wouldn't exactly give you any additional health benefit.
Would you say that it's around the same level of healthiness as a typical, if you were to eat a meat burger, or is it worse or generally a little better? How would you scale it in comparison?
So it's important to realise here that plant-based alternatives to meat are essentially still a junk food. When you think of processed meat and processed plant-based meat, they all generally fall in the food group of junk food. When we think of the plant-based meat alternative patty, it doesn't really come on its own. It comes usually in a refined bun covered in sauce and toppings. So when we're comparing a meat alternative burger to a regular burger, they actually have similar number of calories, and they make up about a third of the recommended daily calorie intake.
Do you see majority of people eating plant-based products in the future?
Yes, definitely. With any new eating trends, of course, there will be many people wanting to try it out. And it has actually been growing in the last few years, and it's not showing any sign of declining. So it is definitely on the rise.
Is there any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, just like with any diet or way of eating, it's really important to think about what aspects of that diet are going to provide health benefits. At the end of the day, no matter which healthy diet we choose to follow, the basics are that we eat enough whole foods like vegetables, fruit, whole grains. By simply being aware of and monitoring our dietary habits, we automatically start to eat healthier and higher quality food overall.
Wavelength.
Thank you, Amila, chatting to an accredited dietitian, Joyce Haddad, about fake meat, basically. Yeah. That's the whole thrust of the show tonight. We're talking about whether fake meat is our future. We've heard from a local eatery as well, Staazi & Co., who make vegan yiros that honestly, like, myself and a number of people who regularly eat yiros with real lamb all the time, you can't tell the difference. Mm-hmm. So this raises a bunch of interesting issues. It was good to hear from Joyce there about why just because it's vegan doesn't necessarily make it healthier.
No.
Just because it doesn't come from an animal, you're still eating something that has been fried. It's got white bread and, chips along the side.
You know what? Us lazy vegetarians and vegans, we deserve this.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
I'm the laziest person in the world, and I truly don't really care that much about food. I'm not a foodie. I mean, I like good food. Don't get me wrong, but you can't beat a burger most of the time.
This is like possibly the most we've ever been opposed on a topic.
In what way?
Because usually we have like very similar viewpoints and approaches to things, but like you're a vegetarian who doesn't really care about food, and I'm a full meat eater who like it loves food and is obsessed with it.
Tension in the room is reaching breaking point. We are just at each other's throats today.
Yeah, but that's because someone just walked past the studio window wearing a tail. That's got nothing to do with the topic at hand. So it really, really took us by surprise when we saw someone walk out of the cinema with a full-on furry tail just around their waist.
I really do wonder what they think of this fake meat situation. Honestly, though, I think that with these options on the table, I think more people will be turning towards it, because even though like maybe the the burgers with the fake meat are still not that good for you. They're probably better for the environment generally, probably use less water to make, and they are probably generally more sustainable than factory farmed meat, which a place like a major fast food store would probably use.
Well, that's it. And there's so many other sustainability issues that come up with that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think everything in balance, everything in moderation.
Wavelength.
Tonight we've been chatting about whether fake meat is our future. It's been a super interesting discussion. But we have one more important story to get through before we wrap up the show.
And it's a very important story. Yeah, you're right. Last week, thousands around the country gathered to protest the alleged murder
of a Yuendumu man.
Yeah, while in police custody. Wavelength went along to the protests, and if you're not sure why this issue has angered so many, we're here to help you catch up.
Wavelength.
Justice for Walker! Justice and truth! Stop killing our kids! Justice for Walker!
After the events that took place on November 10th, where Kumajai Walker was shot by a police officer in the Northern Territory, resulting in the 19-year-old's death, protests around the country have been taking place, demanding justice not just for him but for all Aboriginal people. Last Wednesday, people took the streets of Adelaide to rally from the Parliament House, asking for equality under the chant "Black Lives Matter" and "Justice for Walker."
We don't want any more massacres in this country. We don't want any more deaths in this country, and we don't want any more inequality and poor treatment of the Aboriginal people. Over 2,550 Aboriginal people are in jail. For the rest of the nation, that figure is 146. We know something's going wrong. We've had enough. We've had the commissions, and we want more. And we're here today to demand justice.
Over 400 Indigenous people have died while in custody since 1991. While inquiries have uncovered medical malpractice, no police officer had ever been prosecuted for murder. Until now, with 28-year-old former army officer, policeman Zachary Rolfe. However, he's already stated he will plead not guilty. In the meantime, the whole country mourns the death of Kumajai Walker.
Wavelength.
Thank you, Adrian, for putting that package together. A brief explanation of why so many people are angry about the murder of an Indigenous man that occurred over the last couple of weeks, and now the police officer has actually been charged as a result of people making so much noise.
Yeah, it's a very sad story, very sobering to hear that, and I mean, it's great to have that explained so clearly. Obviously, this has been going on for quite a long time in these communities, and they're obviously quite upset.
Exactly. And while the investigation and the court process for this alleged murder takes place, the Yuendumu community is asking for a online fundraiser to help along with the investigations. It's raised more than $70,000 in 2 days, which is awesome.
Right.
And it's just been nice, I think, to see a lot of people actually pay attention to something like this, because there's so much stuff that happens, you know, up in the Northern Territory and up in these communities that us here in the city, we just don't really hear about.
It doesn't really make the front page a lot of the time. And it was, I mean, also last week there were the bushfires going on too. So it was a lot going on at once. And it's still amazing that it is definitely getting the attention it rightfully deserves.
100%. We have got to go. The come up is about to start, and then Caroline Tucker with Fresh Air for all of your music needs. Make sure you subscribe to the Wavelength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get them. You'll be the first to know when tonight's episode goes up, and you can listen back to hours of Wavelength content just from the last few months.
You can just sit there and listen to me and Zane just yell at you for hours if you want to.
I'm sure you want nothing more after listening to an hour of this show.
Wavelength.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.